We're very pleased to have Susan Anton join us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me just say for a second is that Rex Reed wasn't the only person. Stephen Holden in the New York Times.
Interesting. I don't know where we developed this idea in our culture that,
that
if
you're tall and
people
blonde,
look a certain way, then they can't be.
For decades, the story of Susan Anton and her dramatic romance with Dudley Moore lingered in the shadows of Hollywood gossip, whispered through
Everybody! You want me done this, Mark? Yes, sir.
tabloids and late-night talk shows, but rarely addressed by the woman at the center of it all. Now, after years of silence and careful distance from the head...
Oh, thank you. Oh, that is better. Jerry, you take such good care of me. We're gonna learn to love me or leave me. Either one you wanna do.
Headlines that once defined her personal life, Susan Anton has finally opened up about the truth behind their explosive split, revealing a deeply... emotional story of love, ambition, heartbreak, and the immense pressure fame that surrounded their relationship during one of Hollywood's most intense eras.
What I see, I believe. Well, the old one may be barely breathing, but the heart of rock and roll is still beating. All right, Michael.
For many who remember the early 1980s, Anton and Moore were one of the entertainment world's most talked-about couples. Their relationship captured public imagination not only because both were beloved performers, but also because of the stark contrast between them. Susan Anton was a tall, glamorous singer and actress whose striking presence had already made her a rising star in television and music, while Dudley Moore was a brilliant British comedian and actor known for his sharp wit and unforgettable roles. Their romance seemed unlikely, almost cinematic in its own way, and that very contrast made them irresistible to the media. Cameras followed them everywhere, capturing every smile, every public appearance, and every moment that hinted at a fairy tale love story unfolding in real time. Yet behind the glittering Hollywood lights and magazine covers was a relationship far more complicated than the public ever realized. Susan Anton recalls that when she first met Dudley Moore, there was an immediate connection that surprised them both. Moore, already famous for his role in the blockbuster film 10, had an undeniable charisma that drew people toward him. He was funny, intelligent, and incredibly charming. Anton, who was building her own career in music and television, found his humor irresistible. Friends who watched them together often said the pair balanced each other perfectly, his quick wit matched by her warmth and confidence. But the very qualities that made them fascinating as a couple also made their relationship difficult to navigate under the relentless gaze of the media. Every public outing became a headline, every disagreement turned into speculation, and every moment of happiness seemed to invite even more scrutiny. Susan Anton explains that at the time, neither of them fully understood how overwhelming that pressure would become as their relationship grew more serious. The spotlight intensified. Hollywood in the late 1970s and early 1980s was a world where celebrity relationships were treated almost like public property. Paparazzi followed stars everywhere, tabloids competed for sensational stories, and private lives were rarely private for long. Anton remembers feeling as though every step she took was being judged or interpreted by someone else. Headlines often focus on superficial aspects of their relationship, particularly their height difference, turning what should have been a simple personal detail into a constant talking point. What the public rarely saw was how exhausting that attention could be for both of them. Dudley Moore, despite his comedic brilliance, struggled with the pressures of fame in his own way, while Anton was still finding her footing in an industry that demanded perfection while offering very little emotional protection. Behind closed doors, their relationship was filled with both joy and strain. Anton describes moments of genuine happiness, quiet evenings away from cameras, long conversations about their dreams, and shared laughter that reminded her why she had fallen for him in the first place. Moore had a deeply creative mind, and when he talked about music, film, or comedy, his passion was contagious. Those moments, she says, were the real heart of their relationship, but alongside those memories were growing tensions. The demands of their careers meant constant travel, long hours, and an unpredictable lifestyle that left little room for stability. At times, the The pressure of public attention only amplified their private disagreements. According to Anton, one of the most difficult aspects of their relationship was the way the outside world shaped the narrative around them. Rumors circulated constantly, some exaggerated, others completely untrue. Articles speculated about arguments, jealousies, and career rivalries, often painting a dramatic picture that didn't match reality. Yet even when those stories were inaccurate, they still created tension. It's difficult, Anton explains, to ignore headlines about your own life when they appear everywhere, from magazines on grocery store shelves to television talk shows discussing your relationship as if it were entertainment. Over time, the weight of that constant scrutiny began to take its toll. The turning point in their relationship didn't arrive all at once. Instead, Anton describes it as a gradual realization that the life they were living together was becoming increasingly unsustainable. Fame, she says, can distort even the strongest relationships because it creates an environment where trust and privacy are constantly under threat. Small misunderstandings can grow into major conflicts when amplified by outside speculation. Both she and Moore were trying to maintain demanding careers while navigating a romance that had become a media spectacle. Eventually, the stress reached a point where they both had to confront the difficult truth that love alone wasn't enough to keep them together. When the breakup finally happened, it made headlines across the entertainment world. Tabloids described it as explosive, dramatic, and filled with bitterness. But Susan Anton now says the reality was far more complex and far more human than those headlines suggested. Yes, there were painful moments, and yes, emotions ran high, but at the core of it all was a realization that they had reached different places in their lives. Their split, she explains, wasn't simply about one argument or one event. It was a result of many pressures building over time, from career demands to personal struggles that neither of them had fully shared with the public. In the years that followed, Anton chose largely to remain silent about the relationship. Part of that decision came from a desire to protect both her own privacy and the legacy of someone she once loved deeply. Dudley Moore's career continued to evolve, bringing him further acclaim and recognition as one of the most talented comedic actors of his generation. Films like Arthur cemented his place in Hollywood history, while Anton continued to build her own path in entertainment, focusing on music, television, and live performances that allowed her to connect with audiences on her own terms. Though their lives moved in different directions, the memories of their time together remain an important chapter in both of their stories. Looking back now, Susan Anton speaks about that period with a sense of reflection rather than regret. She acknowledges that their relationship was intense, complicated, and sometimes overwhelming, but she also recognizes a genuine affection that once existed between them. Time, she says, has a way of changing how we see the past. Moments that once felt painful can become lessons, and experiences that once seemed chaotic can reveal deeper truths about who we were and who we eventually became. For Anton, speaking openly about the relationship now isn't about reopening old wounds. It's about offering a more honest perspective on a story that has long been shaped by speculation. She also hopes that sharing her side of the story might remind people that celebrities are human beings navigating the same emotional challenges as anyone else, only under a far brighter spotlight. Relationships are complicated even without the pressure of fame, and when millions of people feel entitled to comment on your personal life, the challenge becomes even greater. Anton believes that understanding is something the public often forgets when discussing celebrity relationships. Behind every headline are real people with real feelings, trying to make the best decisions they can with the circumstances they are given. In many ways, Anton's willingness to finally speak about her past reflects the broader perspective that comes with time and experience. The entertainment industry has changed dramatically since the early days of her career, and conversations about privacy, mental health, and the pressures of fame are now far more open than they once were. By sharing her memories now, she hopes to contribute to a more thoughtful understanding of what it truly means to live life in the public eye today. Susan Anton's story is no longer defined by a single relationship or a dramatic breakup that once dominated headlines. Instead, it stands as part of a much larger journey, one that includes decades of performances, creative achievements, and personal growth. Her reflections on her time with Dudley Moore reveal not just the story of a romance that captured public attention, but also the resilience required to move forward after the spotlight fades. And in finally breaking her silence, Anton offers something rare in the world of celebrity storytelling. A reminder that behind every legend, every headline, and every whispered rumor lies a deeply human story waiting to be understood today as the years passed after breakup. Susan Anton slowly began to see that the end of her relationship with Dudley Moore was not simply the closing of a romantic chapter, but a moment that forced her to redefine who she was both personally and professionally. At the time, the world around her seemed eager to reduce the entire story to a headline: a glamorous actress abandoned, a famous comedian moving on, another Hollywood romance collapsing under weight of fame. But Anton remembers that reality felt far more complicated than the narrative that tabloids had constructed. In truth, both of them were navigating careers that demanded constant attention, endless travel, and the pressure to remain relevant in an industry that rarely allowed its stars to pause and reflect. The emotional toll of living inside that environment was something Anton says she did not fully understand until much later point. One of the most difficult aspects of the breakup was how quickly the public formed opinions about what had happened. Reporters speculated endlessly about the reasons behind the split, often presenting theories as facts. Some suggested jealousy, others claimed professional rivalry, and a few even portrayed their relationship as something that had always been destined to fail. For Anton, reading those stories was both painful and surreal. She knew that the reality of their relationship contained moments of love, laughter, and genuine connection that the public would never see. Yet she also understood that once a story becomes part of Hollywood mythology, it can be nearly impossible to correct the record. During this time, Anton made a deliberate decision to focus on her own career rather than responding publicly to every rumor. She continued performing, recording music, and appearing on television, slowly building a reputation that extended far beyond the headlines about her personal life. Those who worked with her during that period often described her as remarkably focused and resilient. Instead of allowing the breakup to define her, she poured her energy into creative projects that reminded audiences why she had first captured their attention. Her performances carried a new depth, shaped by experiences that had tested her emotionally but also strengthened her sense of identity. At the same time, Anton admits that privately she was still processing the emotional aftermath of the relationship. Ending a romance that had once felt so significant left behind questions that took years to fully answer. She wondered whether things might have turned out differently if the spotlight had been less intense, or if they had met at another stage in their lives. But with time came the realization that certain relationships, no matter how meaningful, exist only for a particular chapter. They teach lessons, shape perspectives, and leave memories that continue to influence the future long after the relationship itself has ended. For Dudley Moore, the years following their breakup were also filled with both triumphs and challenges. His talent continued to captivate audiences, particularly after the success of Arthur, which became one of the defining roles of his career. Moore's portrayal of the charming yet troubled millionaire showcased not only his comedic brilliance but also a vulnerability that resonated deeply with viewers. To Anton, watching his success from a distance was bittersweet. She remained proud of the work he was doing, even as their lives moved along separate paths. What many people didn't realize at the time was that Anton continued to hold a deep respect for Moore's artistry. Despite the pain of their breakup, she never dismissed the impact he had on her life. In fact, she often reflected on the creative conversations they once shared, the late-night discussions about music, film, and performance that revealed Moore's extraordinary intellect. Those memories, she says, remain some of the most meaningful aspects of their relationship. They reminded her that beyond the public spectacle, their connection had once been built on genuine admiration and curiosity about each other's talents. Today, as the entertainment world evolved through the decades, the story of Anton and Moore gradually faded from the constant spotlight. New stars emerged, new romances captured public attention, and the headlines that had once seemed so overwhelming became distant echoes of another era. Yet every so often, interviews or retrospectives would bring the subject back into conversation. Each time it happened, Anton chose her words carefully, offering brief comments without diving deeply into the emotional history behind them. She believed that some experiences deserved privacy, especially when they involved people who were no longer able to share their own perspectives. That perspective became even more important after Moore's health began to decline later in life. When he was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological disorder, the news shocked many of his fans. The condition slowly affected his ability to perform and communicate, creating a heartbreaking contrast with the vibrant performer audiences had once adored. For Anton, hearing about his struggles stirred complex emotions. Although they had not been part of each other's daily life for many years, she still felt compassion for the man who had once played such an important role in her story. That I am reflecting on those years now. Anton often speaks about forgiveness, not in a dramatic sense, but as a quiet acceptance of the past. In reflecting on those years now, Anton often speaks about forgiveness, not in a dramatic sense, but as a quiet acceptance of the past. She recognizes that both she and Moore were navigating an unpredictable industry while trying to understand themselves and each other. Mistakes were made, emotions ran high, and circumstances sometimes pushed them in directions they might not have chosen under different conditions. But rather than dwelling on what went wrong, Anton prefers to remember the moments that revealed Moore's humor, intelligence, and warmth. One particular memory she has shared involves a private evening during the early days of their relationship. They had escaped the chaos of Hollywood for a brief getaway, sitting together with a piano in a quiet room. Moore began playing, effortlessly moving from classical melodies to playful improvisations that made Anton laugh. In that moment, she saw the full range of his talent. Not just a comedian the world recognized, but the deeply gifted musician who could express emotions through music in ways that words often couldn't capture. That memory, she says, remains one of the clearest reflections of who he truly was. As Anton has grown older, she has also developed a great appreciation for the lessons that relationship taught her. The experience of being at the center of such intense public attention forced her to develop resilience and self-awareness that would later guide her through other challenges in life. It taught her the importance of maintaining personal boundaries, protecting one's emotional well-being, and understanding that public perception rarely tells the full story of a private relationship. When Anton finally decided to speak more openly about her past with Moore, it wasn't motivated by bitterness or a desire to revisit old conflicts. Instead, it came from a place of reflection and honesty. After decades of hearing others interpret their relationship, she felt it was time to offer a more balanced perspective, one that acknowledged both the beauty and the difficulty of what they had shared. By doing so, she hoped to move the conversation away from sensationalism and towards something more thoughtful. Her reflections also highlight a broader truth about Hollywood history. Many of the relationships that once dominated headlines were shaped by forces far beyond control of the individuals involved. Fame creates an environment where every emotion is amplified, every mistake becomes public, and every decision carries consequences that extend far beyond the private lives of those involved. Understanding that context, Anton believes, allows people to see her story and Moore's story with greater empathy today. When Susan Anton looks back on the years that once defined her in the public eye, she sees them not as a tragedy but as part of a complex journey. The love she once shared with Dudley Moore was real, even if it ultimately couldn't survive the pressure surrounding it. And while the world may always remember their relationship as one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances, Anton knows that the truth is far richer and more nuanced than the headlines ever suggested. As the decades continue to pass, Susan Anton began to notice something interesting about the way people remembered her relationship with Dudley Moore. For many fans who had lived through the era when their romance dominated entertainment headlines, the story had taken on an almost legendary quality. It had become one of those Hollywood relationships that people referenced whenever they spoke about unlikely couples, glamorous romances, or the intense scrutiny that fame can bring. Yet for Anton, the memories were never just a cultural anecdote. They were moments of her life, memories of youth, ambition, affection, and the complicated process of growing up in front of millions of strangers. She explains that when she first entered the entertainment world, she was still discovering who she truly was as a performer and as a person. The industry moved quickly, offering opportunities that seemed dazzling but also demanded enormous sacrifices. Long hours on set, relentless promotional tours, and the constant pressure to maintain a public image left little room for personal reflection. At the time, falling in love with someone who understood that chaotic lifestyle felt both comforting and exciting. Moore, with his sharp intelligence and playful humor, seemed to understand the strange world they were both navigating. But Anton now believes that two people can care deeply for one another and still struggle to build a stable life together under extraordinary circumstances. Hollywood relationships often appear glamorous from the outside, yet behind the scenes they can be fragile. Careers rise and fall quickly, schedules rarely align, and the presence of cameras means that even small disagreements can become public spectacles. Anton remembers moments when she and Moore would read stories about themselves that felt almost unrecognizable. In those articles, their relationship was transformed into a dramatic narrative designed to capture attention rather than reflect reality. One of the things Anton finds most striking today is how much attention was once devoted to superficial details. The difference in their height, for example, became a constant talking point in interviews and gossip columns. While it might have seemed humorous to outsiders, Anton recalls how exhausting it was to repeatedly answer questions about something so trivial. She often wondered why the media seemed more interested in visual contrast than in the artistic accomplishments that both she and Moore were striving to achieve. Over time, those small frustrations accumulated, creating an atmosphere where it became difficult to separate genuine personal experiences from the image being projected to the public. Despite all of this, Anton emphasizes that their relationship was not defined solely by conflict or tension. There were many moments of happiness, moments that still bring a smile to her face when she remembers them. Moore had an extraordinary ability to make people laugh, sometimes with carefully crafted jokes and other times with spontaneous bursts of humor that caught everyone off guard. Anton remembers how his wit could transform even the most stressful day into something lighter. That sense of humor was one of the qualities that made him beloved not only by audiences but also by friends and colleagues throughout the entertainment industry. During quieter moments away from the cameras, Moore's personality often revealed a deeper side that audiences rarely saw. He was an accomplished musician who had studied classical piano, and Anton recalls evenings when he would sit down at a piano and play for hours. In those moments, the comedian known to millions disappeared, replaced by a thoughtful artist who expressed emotions through music. Watching him perform privately gave Anton a glimpse into the complexity of his character, a combination of brilliance, sensitivity, and vulnerability that made him both fascinating and sometimes difficult to understand. When their relationship finally reached its breaking point, Anton says the emotional weight of the decision was enormous. Ending something that had once felt so promising was not easy for either of them. Yet there also came a sense of clarity. Both recognized that the pressures surrounding them were not going to disappear, and continuing together might only deepen the strain they were already experiencing. In hindsight, his performance in Arthur became iconic, earning widespread praise and cementing his place as one of the most distinctive comedic actors of his generation. For Anton, the years that followed opened doors to new creative opportunities, from television appearances to stage performances that showcase her versatility as both a singer and actress. While their lives moved in separate directions, the influence they had on one another remained an invisible thread connecting their histories. To Anton's decision to finally speak openly about the relationship comes from a sense that enough time has passed for the story to be told with honesty.